The city never truly slept, but in the hush between midnight and dawn, silence carried a weight of its own. On his nightly walk, Caleb Mitchell slowed, his steps faltering beneath a flickering street lamp. Two figures huddled on a bench, a small girl, Grace, asleep with a backpack as her pillow, and her mother, Amber, trembling in the cold. When Amber lifted her head, Caleb's world shifted forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. Caleb Mitchell knew every corner of the city block. He walked it nightly, a routine born of restless energy and the need to clear his head after long shifts. But that night, the glow of a flickering street lamp drew his eyes to something that stopped him cold. A young woman sat hunched on a park bench, her arms wrapped tightly around a little girl no older than 6. The child's backpack was her pillow, her tiny frame shivering despite the blanket draped over her shoulders. Caleb felt his chest tighten. His own son, Noah, slept safe at home just a few blocks away. Yet here was a child, someone's daughter, left to the elements. He hesitated, aware that approaching could frighten them. But the little girl stirred, whispering, "Mommy, I'm cold." Caleb's hand moved before his doubts could stop him. He shrugged off his jacket and knelt beside them, draping it gently over the girl. The mother startled, eyes wary. "We're fine," she said quickly, though her trembling hands betrayed her words. Caleb's voice was low, steady. "No kid should have to sleep outside. I'm not here to judge, just to help." Her eyes narrowed with mistrust, but softened when Grace, the girl, snuggled into the jacket, whispering a thank you. Caleb offered a faint smile. "One night. My place is small, but it's warm. You can leave in the morning if you want." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Finally, with a shaky breath, the woman nodded. "Just one night." And with that, 3 lives began to intertwine. Caleb guided them through quiet streets, his pace careful, as if any sudden move might break the fragile trust Amber had given him. She walked with her head down, clutching Grace's hand tightly, every muscle in her body tense as though she expected danger around each corner. When they reached Caleb's modest apartment building, Amber paused at the entrance. "We can't stay long," she muttered. "I don't want to be a burden." Caleb shook his head, unlocking the door. "No one's a burden for needing help." His tone was matter-of-fact, not pitying, and that seemed to ease her just enough to step inside. The apartment was small but lived in. A worn couch, dishes drying by the sink, a stack of Noah's schoolbooks on the table. Amber scanned the room warily, while Grace's eyes lit up at the sight of a toy car left on the floor. From the bedroom, Noah patted out in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Dad." His voice was sleepy but curious. Caleb crouched to meet his gaze. "This is Amber and Grace. They're staying here tonight. Be kind." Noah blinked, then offered Grace his toy car. "Want to play?" The little girl hesitated, then nodded, clutching it like treasure. Amber's shoulders sagged as she watched her daughter smile for the first time that day. Caleb caught the look, equal parts relief and exhaustion. "You can rest," he said gently. "I'll keep an eye on them." For the first time in a long while, Amber let someone else carry the weight. And in that quiet apartment, a fragile seed of trust was planted. The smell of scrambled eggs filled the apartment when Amber awoke. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then Grace's soft laugh drifted in from the kitchen, followed by Noah's excited chatter. Amber sat up on the couch, her heart tightening. Grace hadn't laughed like that in weeks. She padded into the kitchen, embarrassed to find Caleb already cooking, his sleeves rolled up, Noah setting out mismatched plates. Grace sat at the table with Noah's crayons, her cheeks pink with happiness. "You didn't have to do this," Amber said quickly, her voice clipped with pride. "We were going to leave early." Caleb glanced up, calm as ever. Breakfast is cheap, and kids can't run on empty stomachs. He slid a plate toward her, as if daring her to argue. Amber crossed her arms, torn between gratitude and shame. "I don't want your charity." He met her eyes steadily. "It's not charity. It's kindness. There's a difference." His words were simple, but they cut through her defenses. Grace tugged on her sleeve, showing her a messy crayon drawing of a house. "Look, Mommy. Noah says his dad fixed the sink all by himself. Can we have a house again too?" Amber's throat tightened. She forced a smile for her daughter, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Caleb noticed and said nothing. only placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. In the silence that followed, Amber realized something unsettling. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. Late morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, catching the bright colors of Grace's drawing. The children were giggling, trading crayons, when a sudden, violent knock rattled the door. Amber froze, the color draining from her face. Caleb's instincts sharpened. He set down his coffee and moved quietly toward the entry. The pounding came again, louder this time, followed by a voice that made Amber flinch. "Amber, I know you're in there. Open up." Caleb turned back just long enough to see her trembling, clutching Grace as if she could make her vanish. Her lips barely moved, but he heard the word. Tyler. The name carried weight. Anger, fear, history. Caleb's jaw tightened. He motioned for Noah to take Grace into the bedroom. The boy obeyed without a word, guiding her gently by the hand. Another slam rattled the door. "You can't hide my daughter from me." Tyler's voice was harsh, dripping with entitlement. Caleb stood squarely before the door, his voice low but steady. "You need to leave. Right now." A bitter laugh came from the other side. "And who the hell are you? Some hero playing house?" The knob twisted violently, the frame shuddering. Amber's eyes filled with panic. "He won't stop," she whispered. Caleb pressed his hand flat against the door, his voice rising just enough to carry authority. "If you care about Grace, you'll walk away. Because if you force your way in, you're not just fighting me, you're scaring her. And that ends here." Silence stretched. Then footsteps retreated down the hall, each one heavy with threat. Amber sagged against the wall, tears spilling freely. Caleb stayed by the door, listening, his own pulse thundering. He knew this wasn't over. Tyler would be back. The apartment felt unnaturally still after Tyler's footsteps faded. Even the children's whispers from the bedroom carried a tremor of fear. Amber slid down the wall, her hands covering her face. Caleb crouched nearby, giving her space, but not leaving. "He won't stop," she said finally, her voice raw. "He'll keep coming until he gets what he wants." Caleb's brow furrowed. "What does he want, Grace? Or control over you?" Amber laughed bitterly, a sound laced with exhaustion. "Both. Always both." She wiped at her cheeks, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I left after he threw a chair across the room. Grace was there." She screamed so loud, it finally broke something in me. "I took her and ran. Thought I could rebuild before he found us." Caleb absorbed her words, the weight of them pressing hard against his chest. He thought of Noah, of the nights he'd wondered if he was enough, of the vow he'd made never to let his son grow up in fear. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Grace doesn't need a man like that. She needs her mother, safe." Amber's lip quivered. "Safe?" She gestured around the small apartment. "We're hiding in strangers' homes. I can't give her safety. I can't even give her a bed." Caleb shook his head. "You gave her something more important. You stayed. You didn't abandon her." The words hung in the air, soft but steady. For the first time, Amber's shoulders loosened, if only slightly. From the bedroom, Grace's small voice broke the silence. "Mommy, is it okay now?" Amber's eyes filled again, but this time her tears carried something different. Not just fear, something closer to hope. The afternoon passed in cautious quiet. Caleb fixed a loose cabinet door while the kids sprawled on the floor with crayons. Grace clung to Noah at first, shy and watchful, but soon their laughter filled the room. They built castles on paper, trading colors like old friends. Amber sat at the table, Caleb's laptop open before her. She hadn't touched a keyboard in months, her fingers stiff as she began typing out a resume. Every line reminded her of what she'd lost: a steady job, an apartment, dignity. Yet the act of writing also stirred something she thought was gone: determination. "You're good at this," Caleb said, glancing up from his work. Amber gave a faint, self-conscious smile. "I used to be, before everything fell apart." She hesitated, then added, "I don't want your charity, Caleb. I'll find work. I'll pay you back." He shook his head. "This isn't about debt. It's about getting you and Grace steady again." Amber studied him, searching for any sign of hidden motive. She found only sincerity and the quiet fatigue of a man balancing too much, yet refusing to turn away. Grace suddenly dashed over, waving her paper proudly. "Look, a house with 4 windows. That means everyone gets their own room." Amber's throat tightened. Caleb bent down, admiring the crooked but bright drawing. "That's a good dream," he said softly. "And dreams are where new beginnings start." For a brief moment, Amber allowed herself to picture it. A life not ruled by fear, but by safety. A home where Grace could laugh freely. And sitting across the table, Caleb didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Evening crept over the city, painting the apartment in hues of amber and gray. The kids, worn out from play, curled on the couch with a blanket. Their soft breathing filled the room like a fragile reminder of peace. Amber rinsed dishes in the sink, the steady rhythm calming her frayed nerves. Caleb leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with quiet thoughtfulness. "You did a lot today," he said gently. "That resume, it's a start." She allowed herself a small nod. "Maybe, if anyone will even hire me." "You've got grit," Caleb replied. "That matters more than people think." Amber's lips curved faintly, but before the moment could settle, a noise shattered it. A slow scrape against the hallway door, deliberate and mocking. Caleb's body stiffened. Amber froze, her hands clenching the edge of the counter. A voice followed, low and venomous. "Amber, you think you can hide?" Grace stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. "Mommy," she whispered. Caleb motioned sharply. "Keep the kids quiet." He moved toward the door, every muscle coiled. The shadow beneath it shifted. Tyler was there. "You've got my daughter in there," Tyler hissed. "Open this door before I break it down." Caleb planted himself squarely in front of it, his voice steady, iron beneath the calm. "You won't touch her. Not tonight, not ever." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then the sound of retreating footsteps echoed down the hall, leaving dread in their wake. Amber slumped against the wall, her breath ragged. Caleb turned back, his expression carved from stone. "He's not going away," he said. "But neither am I." Amber met his gaze, fear and gratitude battling in her eyes. For the first time, she believed him. After Tyler's footsteps faded, Caleb stayed by the door for a long time, listening to the silence outside. Only when he was sure the hallway was empty did he turn back. Amber sat on the couch, holding Grace tight. Noah sat beside them, his small hand resting protectively on Grace's shoulder. The children's eyes were wide, but their voices steady. "Dad," Noah said. He sounded angry. "What if he comes back?" Caleb knelt in front of his son. "If he does, I'll be here. You don't need to be afraid." His voice was low but certain, a promise Noah had heard before and trusted with his whole heart. Amber's arms trembled around Grace. "He'll never stop," she whispered, more to herself than anyone. "He'll drag us back if he can. I don't have the strength to fight him in court. I can barely keep food on the table." Caleb met her eyes, firm but gentle. "Then you don't fight alone anymore. You're not going back to that." Amber blinked, startled by the conviction in his tone. "Why? You barely know us." Caleb glanced at the kids, their small faces lit by the dim lamp. "Because I know what it's like to be left alone when you need someone the most. And I won't let that happen to either of you." Grace, still clutching Noah's toy car, whispered into her mother's ear. "I like it here. It feels safe." Amber broke then, quiet tears spilling, not from fear, but from the fragile relief of being believed. Caleb didn't press, didn't demand. He simply sat nearby, steady as a wall, letting her lean into the promise that safety was possible. And in that small apartment, a line was drawn. Tyler could threaten, but he would not win. Days passed, and the apartment slowly shifted from a shelter into something more, almost like a home. Noah and Grace became inseparable, sprawled on the floor drawing superheroes, their laughter echoing through the small rooms. Amber began to rise earlier, borrowing Caleb's laptop to send out applications. Each message she typed carried both fear and determination. One afternoon, she emerged from the bedroom holding her phone, her hands trembling. "I got an interview," she whispered, her voice caught between disbelief and joy. Caleb smiled, the kind of smile that warmed more than words. "That's your first step back." Grace tugged on her mom's sleeve. "Does this mean we can have a house again?" Amber knelt, pulling her daughter close. "It means we're trying, sweetheart. And that's how things change." Caleb overheard and felt a pang deep in his chest. He remembered nights when Noah had asked the same kinds of questions, when he'd struggled to give answers that didn't sound like lies. He watched Amber kiss Grace's forehead, and something shifted inside him. He wanted them to have more than just survival. He wanted them to have peace. That evening, as the kids built a blanket fort, Caleb repaired the lock on the front door, reinforcing it with spare metal brackets. Amber watched quietly, her eyes softer than before. "You didn't have to," she said. "Yes, I did," Caleb replied. "Because you shouldn't have to flinch every time someone knocks." For the first time since they'd met, Amber didn't argue. She simply whispered, "Thank you," and let the silence between them carry what words could not. The park glowed under late afternoon sun, its benches alive with chatter, children chasing each other across the grass. Grace's laughter rang out as Noah pushed her gently on the swings, both of them shrieking with joy. For Amber, the sound was almost too much to bear, because it was proof that her daughter could still be a child, unbroken. Caleb sat on a nearby bench, watching them with quiet pride. Amber joined him, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "She hasn't laughed like that in months," she admitted. "She's safe here," Caleb said simply. Amber's eyes clouded. "Safe for now. Tyler won't disappear. He'll try again. He always does." Caleb leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the kids. "Then he'll find I'm not easy to move. I can't erase what he's done, but I can stand between him and both of you. That's not charity, Amber. That's just right." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken of her life in terms of worth and protection without expecting something in return. She blinked hard, and for the first time, hope outweighed fear. Grace ran up, holding Noah's hand, her cheeks flushed from play. "Mommy, can we stay here forever?" she asked with the innocent certainty only a child could carry. Amber knelt, pulling her close, whispering, "You're safe now, baby." Her voice cracked, but her smile held. Caleb looked at them, at Amber's fragile strength, at Grace's small arms wrapped tight around her mother, and silently made a vow. He hadn't just given them shelter for one night. He'd chosen to stand with them, for as long as it took. And though Tyler's shadow still lingered, Amber and Grace no longer faced it alone. It wasn't the end of their troubles, but it was the beginning of a family stitched together by courage, kindness, and the promise never to walk away. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.